Hello Capricorn, and welcome to your year 2022 forecast for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to share with you the major strands of this year, not least the solar eclipses, which are really exciting for your sign personally. The North Node goes into your 5th house on the 19th of January, where it will be for the rest of the year. That really gives you a great opportunity to showcase your talents. Now Jupiter, the planet of fortune, moves on the 10th of May initially into the sign of Aries. Very much about home, aspiration, hopes for expansion, improvements, changes, additions to the family. And of course we have the Mercury retrogrades, the role of Mars in an extended journey through your 6th house of physical activity from the 20th of August, and your personal new moon on the 23rd of December, which is really sparkling with possibilities. But before I go on, I would be grateful if you would subscribe to my channel if you've yet to do so. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Also, if you'd like to have your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the link beneath this video to subscribe. I write for Britain's most read daily newspaper, the Metro, and it would be great to share this with you too. Also, if you would like to ascend above this Zodiac forecast and understand what this year means for you as an individual based on your time, date and place of birth, you can get year 2022 forecast plus a character analysis. If you order it in 21, the rest of the year 3 plus 30% off. If you do order in year 2022, don't worry, I'll send you 12 full months from that point, plus the character analysis and 30% off. Now, before we go into the start of this year, which sees a major stellium of energy in your sign, I just want to retrospectively look at the solar eclipse of the 4th of December. Now this occurred in your 12th solar house, which is a delicate area, very much to do with reflection, quite spiritual, very much to do with healing, and Mercury, the planet of communication, was combining with that eclipse. Mercury is about how we think, but in the 12th house it can mean that there's a sense that some of the more hidden aspects of life or elements of life, some of the areas that sometimes we're a little less comfortable with grappling with, things like past hurts or anxieties or fears, maybe those things need to be grappled with a little more as you come into this year, because that solar eclipse provides a backdrop energy into the first months of 2022. But gloriously on that eclipse, Venus, the planet of love and attraction, was in your sign combining with Pluto. So I feel that there's the potential, as 2022 begins, that some of the energies from that eclipse are still very active in your situation, and it is giving you an opportunity to perhaps refresh your personal appearance or refresh your approach to relationships of all kinds, especially if you can assimilate the more spiritual aspects of life much more in your overall attitudes to life. Now fast forwards to the solar return for the whole year. A solar return gives us a background energy which will be present for the whole 12 months, but as other influences come in, they fill in the details more. It's rather like going to an art class and the tutor asks you to take your canvas, put a watercolour on, take your charcoal, outline the item or the subject you want to draw or paint in greater detail. That's always going to be part of the bigger picture that builds up. And this solar return, you can see from the screen, has Venus and Pluto conjunct again, just like that solar eclipse on the 4th of December. And the reason for that is that on the 19th of December, Venus went into a retrograde. And in fact, broadly, they're pretty close together for the whole of December. So your ability to draw things to you has definitely been heightened just before the start of this year and can be throughout 2022. Now you can see by Venus there is the RX symbol, retrograde. And there could be an argument that Venus retrograde in your own sign means that you'll be rethinking your approach to relationships, but Venus also governs creativity and also style and presentation. So if you give yourself some kind of dynamic makeover at the start of this year, it wouldn't be a surprise. But next to Venus, you can see there is the very intense energies of Pluto, which have been with you since 2008. And he's going to be with you all this year too. That doesn't change. Now, also Mercury's alongside both of them. So if you are wanting to be more entrepreneurial, more single-minded in terms of moving forwards with something that's important to you, it wouldn't be a surprise to me if you can bring together the more business-like energies of Mercury, the more creative energies of Venus, but the passion and drive of Pluto. Because that 4th of December eclipse was in Sagittarius, that energy is there anyway. But look again, the moon at the turn of the year is in Sagittarius, alongside the rather volatile energies of Mars. When the moon and Mars are together, particularly in the 12th house, I think it suggests that some things can come out into the open this year that you may find a little challenging at times. But equally, you could find things that you've kept close to your chest, you will start to open up about as well. So this deeper psychological trend is blending with a need to be more authentically yourself as an individual. The reason for this, Capricorn, is your sign is very much about adhering to the status quo. Now, you may not see yourself in that way. You may see yourself as a very radical, individualistic type of person, and maybe there are parts to your nature like that. But a lot of Capricorns do like to fit into structures, are very hard-working, extremely determined, very patient and applied. I have the greatest of respect for Capricorns. So some of those very durable energies you have come from the rulership of Saturn. But what that 12th house energy is saying to you in the moon and Mars, and also from that solar eclipse of the 4th of December, is to be in tune more with that part of you that may feel more vulnerable, that may feel in some ways is not so acceptable to other people. And this is underscored furthermore because if you look at where the sun is on the wheel, 10 degrees Capricorn, and where the moon is, the midpoint between the two, therefore the balance of your energies this year, is 28 degrees Sagittarius. So being conscious of this 12th house energy is really important to your progress, because if we just focus on what's going on in your sign, it's a tremendous stellium. It does give you great opportunities, but I think it has to all be joined up. So it's taking a more holistic approach to life in general. And I think you could find yourself engaging much more with healing therapies, with at times having some moments of seclusion and quiet and peacefulness, being much more proactive around photography or film or any love of music that you have, because all these things can be very good for the soul. So your soul needs to work in tandem with your individuality. That's the secret mix at the start of this year. But also, if we also look on the screen, Saturn, your ruler, continues for the whole of the year in the sign of Aquarius, which is the second solar house. So that's everyday resources. So being disciplined about those will be necessary still this year. But last year, Saturn was in a big quarrel with Uranus. And Uranus continues in your sector of self-expression, the 5th house. This is to do with being playful and a free spirit. But maybe a lack of finance or feeling a bit inhibited about risking the resources you've got around areas of interest was part of the backdrop story of last year. And because they're still in a right angle within 3 degrees at the start of this year, this influence is still active. It goes on pretty well to the end of January and then really starts to wane, but it still would be there in the background. So I think if you are going to be risk-taking around resources, you will need to think it through very carefully. But that's where you can score very highly, because you're used to being so thorough in terms of doing your due diligence. But equally, you mustn't let Saturn pulverize your passion, which is Uranus, to be more risk-taking and embrace a more creative approach to life. Now, if we fast forwards to the 14th of January, we get the first Mercury retrograde of the year. This one begins for you in the second house, but reverses into your sign by the 3rd of February. There's going to be a bit of a pattern here. And then on the 11th of May, we have a Mercury retrograde which begins in your 6th house of everyday resources, which retreats into your 5th house of creativity before going forwards again. And then on the 10th of September, your 10th house of career and success, while Mercury rewinds into your 9th house of your higher mission, your philosophies, before returning back into that 10th house. So you can see, even though each of these Mercury retrogrades occurs in an air sign for you, it has a very physical impact on your situation. There is one final Mercury retrograde the last 3 days of the year in your sign. So we do have a partial one as the year comes to a close. But by the 19th of January, the North Node comes into the sign of Taurus, and this is really exciting for you. It's going to be here for the next year and a half. The North Node represents our collective consciousness, and the sign of Taurus is very much about foundations. It's earthy. It likes sensual pleasures like good food and wine, or homegrown food, and it's also a very artistic sign in its own way. You know, pottery, crafting, all these things very much in keeping with Taurus. And if you're someone who wants to be more productive in those areas, then this can really be a wonderful change for you. But of course, you already have Uranus in this sector. And then on the 30th of April, we have a glorious solar eclipse in your 5th house. So this supplants the solar eclipse of Sagittarius that was on the 4th of December. So of course, being an earth sign solar eclipse, which combines with Uranus as it does, and sextiles with Mars, exalted in your sign, Mars in your 3rd house of everyday communication, something can really be propelled forwards. That solar eclipse can be a platform for you being much more energetic and much more proactive in your approach. If you're single, this is a glorious eclipse, but it does mean, because of the role of Uranus, that maybe you need to prepare for some kind of change. If you're wanting to maintain something because it just feels safe, but you're finding it very unfulfilling, then you're being pushed to consider a change, a dramatic change, but that could make your life so much more scintillating and exciting. Now, as soon as the 16th of May, there is a lunar eclipse in your sector of friendship and group activities. So that's very much about the moon. The solar eclipse very much about the sun. And the sun in the 5th house is about you manifesting your individuality. And you're going to be judged really by how you're doing by the lunar eclipse. So if people feel that the things you're doing to move forwards, especially if you are wanting to be more creative artistically, or follow your muse in terms of a love affair, it may be that some people will find difficulty with that, and that will be translated through the lunar eclipse of the 16th of May. But this is a test. Sometimes we have to go with what's right for us as individuals, even if we do want to be very considerate of other people's feelings. Otherwise, we're giving all of our power away. So this eclipse series this year is a supreme opportunity for you. I can't stress that enough, Capricorn. But you just need to stay in touch with those energies you were given at the start of the year, which is about being single-minded, but also connected to the more spiritual and emotional aspects of life. That will keep you straight, keep you in balance for the whole of the year, even through these eclipses. Now on the 10th of May, Jupiter, the planet of growth, moves into your fourth house. The fourth house is where we live, how we live there, and with whom. It can be about new additions to the family. If you do want to upgrade your property, expand it, do some kind of upgrade to the bathroom or kitchen, or put a conservatory on the back, this would all be perfect timing for you. Just be conscious, however, that by the 28th of July, Jupiter does slam on the brakes. And by the 28th of October, it actually moves back into the sign of Pisces, which is not a bad thing for you. One, Jupiter rules the sign of Pisces, and the third house is your connections with people on an everyday basis, whether it's neighbours, siblings, just those interactions we have all the time. But it won't be until November the 22nd that Jupiter comes out of retrograde, and then it returns back into your sign, home, family, and emotions on the 21st of December. So you can see that it's not just in Aries at all this year, and it's very important to see that it is crossing two zodiac signs. Now, on the 20th of August, Mars, the planet of passion, moves into Gemini. Gemini is a great position for Mars. A lot of news reporters and people who play sports have Mars in Gemini. But for you, this is the sixth house of hard work, application and detail. But it does go retrograde on the 30th of October. So I think you are going to have a big boost of physical vitality from the 20th of October. And that's obviously something you're really going to enjoy. But just be conscious that you can't overdo it later in the year. Now also, I want to tell you about the October solar eclipse in Scorpio, because this occurs on the 25th, but this links with Venus very, very closely. If you are wanting to get to know someone in a romantic context and it hasn't happened by then, someone you meet through your group of friends, through a peer, through an introduction by someone that you're fond of. It could be someone who's been a friend up until now, but suddenly takes on a much greater appeal for you. But something special can ferment for you around a relationship in the latter part of this year. Maybe it's going to be an improvement in your circle of friends. Because I do feel it's possible that some people could make way this year. With having this axis between the 5th and the 11th house, the 5th house is about what you want, the individual, the 11th house is about the collective. And at some point, the pivot between the two may need to realign, and that could push some people out of your situation that are not right for you, either romantically or in terms of friendship. So this particular solar eclipse at the end of the year can realign you to the future, but in a very uplifting way because of the role of Venus. Then on November the 8th, we have the lunar eclipse, but back in the 5th house. So if that friendship group isn't quite working, that needs to be realigned. And really that's what astrology is about. It's constantly rebalancing. The influences give us the insight to analyse our own attitudes and performance. We're making the most of the tools we're given, and sometimes life can be very difficult. We found this particularly with COVID, and some of this has been beyond our control. So understanding how the planets will impact on us as well as our physical situation gives us the added insights to steer our moves in a more successful way. Which brings us to the 23rd of December and a glorious new moon in your sign, which is conjunct Venus itself, which is fantastic for your sex appeal and drawing things to you positively, but it's linking in a superb angle to the North Node and Uranus. So if you've been wondering where that relationship that I've been telling you about, if it still hasn't emerged by then, this gives you a tremendous chance to make it happen just as this year comes to a close. So there's so much to be excited about this year for you, Capricorn. It really can be uplifting for you. I think you're someone who lives in the physical realm quite a lot. So that midpoint at the start of the year in Sagittarius, the Moon and Mars, also the solar eclipse in Sagittarius on the 4th of December, Venus being retrograde alongside Pluto at the start of the year, you can draw a lot to you this year, but I think you need to be aware of the subtext of situations. Get much better at understanding what's not said, trying to feel what the situations are that you encounter, not just rationalize them in a practical way, which is part of your earth nature. And then if you can do that, the eclipse series definitely gives you a wonderful opportunity to thrive, as does the North Node and Jupiter throughout the year.